So we're going to jump into your latest accomplishment, Midnight Sky, which I loved. I only wish I could have seen it on the big screen because you made a big scale movie. This is like tech category supreme.
Yeah, it was an interesting process because certainly not in my wheelhouse necessarily to start with. So I had to, there were a couple of things I had to do. One is you have to learn from all the cats who did it really well. You have to go back and look at big scale. You start with Ridley and then you move on to Alfonso, obviously, and Soderbergh.
Gravity.
Stuff. And then, it was about 9 months with Jim Bissell, the production designer, and with Maddie Casimir, the VFX coordinator, and with Martin Rue, the cinematographer, to figure out how to shoot it. Because the problem with it is it's two movies. And the one is really tactile. I can understand how to shoot something when you're out in 40 below temperatures. It's easy to shoot. I've been in bad weather and shot before. I knew what I needed there. I knew I could keep the crew smaller. I knew that I knew that the elements would all help. But the other one, we had all this new technology. I was wearing a VR headset with we built the spaceship already digitally, and then I would walk around with a camera in an empty gym and point it so that I could previs pick all the shots. So I'm wandering around with this thing on in this giant empty gym with a bunch of guys behind me with a monitor, and I'm going, okay, there's the angle of the arm coming down. And so it took us a long time to design, quite honestly, because ships are tricky now. We're trying to use the most recent technology that we know to be plausible without it all, but it still has to be somewhat fictionalized because...
Yeah, you're setting this in the future, so it's got to be ahead of where we are now.
Terminal patient outlives the rest of humanity. Someone should put you in a medical journal.
Nobody around to read it.
If you stop the transfusions, you won't last a week.
If I was in a hurry to die, I'd go with you.
They all want to be home.
Where's that?
Well, for you, I guess that's here.
What's really cool about it is you've got this Arctic waste, which I guess you shot in Iceland.
Yeah.
And you chose to play a much older and ailing guy.
Yeah.
You went full beard. You went full older Clooney here.
And my family was really thrilled with that.
So what was that choice for you, that you were going to play the guy that way? You took Vanity and threw it out the window.
Well, I've had to throw Vanity out for a long time now. And it's been a long time since Vanity has been a big player in my in the kind of work I do. But I did think that, in the book he's about 70. In the script, I didn't really read an age. I thought I just thought of him as probably a very unhealthy. He's dying. So the first element was that I had to, obviously you have to lose some weight. So I had to lose about 25 pounds just to get, he's gone. He's dying of a cancer of some form or maybe some effect. We never really wanted to make it a very specific, like we didn't want to make What We'd Done to Earth as specific because there's so many, your imagination is actually a much more powerful tool than film. When you read like Interview with a Vampire and it says, and blood flowed like a river, your imagination is so much more interesting than actually seeing it on film, And so I always like the idea of sort of leaving some things out there for us to figure out. But I knew I had to look pretty beat up. Hard though, tricky because, it weakens you. And, usually when I'm directing, the first thing you do is you spend, a couple of months really getting in shape because, you're a general taking a couple hundred people up a mountain for a while and it requires a lot of energy, particularly the early stuff because we were such a small crew that, we're all picking up camera boxes and running as soon as we found some good weather. But, I've been around long enough and I've had enough really good directors that I could steal from. It's really, there's a lot of things I've learned from Soderbergh about Soderbergh and the Coen brothers about being very specific about what you want to shoot and only shooting what you need. It helps a lot, particularly with a 7-year-old girl out there.
How did you do all the crazy windstorm, out in the elements stuff?
Well, we waited for wind, and it's a funny thing because it's like if you've ever been out in the desert and seen a sandstorm coming, the wind when you're out on that glacier, you're sitting there and it's sunny and you could see forever. And it's beautiful and it's gorgeous, and you're waiting and the wind starts to pick up and you can see it coming. And you go, everybody get ready, here it comes. And then, when it comes, you can't see your hand in front of your face, and it lasts for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then it goes away and you have to wait, or sometimes you go chasing it and looking for places. And, they brought ritters out and stuff like they were going to blow it, and they couldn't even hold them up. The wind was blowing so hard. There were 2 or 3 pieces that we had to get that we didn't get because, we're shooting in, mid-October at sort of the top of the world. And so our light was, it wouldn't get light till 11:30 and it was dark by 3. And so we had to shoot really fast. So we ended up running out of, we knew we had 2 or 3 shots we had to sort of duplicate that were closer. We got the wider stuff and a couple of closer pieces in that sort of Kurosawa dream sequence, where it's the snow. That kind of vibe. There was a couple of shots that we were able to replicate using a lot of wind machines, a lot of atmosphere, and a little help digitally.
So what's interesting about the movie too is that you go it has a meditative quality, and it's very quiet in some sequences, and then it has this intense action. So you're playing around with those dynamics, and you're intercutting with the space station and this whole alternative story and this whole great crew of people that you cast beautifully, I might add.
I will say that from the very beginning when I talked to Netflix, I said, look, if you read the script, this isn't a big, bang, 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 everything blows up all the time kind of film. We have that. There's stuff in it. There's there's 4 or 5 really good set pieces, but you're going to have to earn them. And this is really, as you said, I said from the very beginning, it's meditative. It's a meditation on life and who we are and, how what we are capable of doing to one another. And loss and dealing with loss and whether or not the whole thing's worth it. And so we wanted there to be, the little girl doesn't talk. So for me to just talk all the time gets to be silly. And what was beautiful about Mark's script was he understood that my piece of it should be less. The less dialogue. You don't have to explain everything to an audience that's not supposed to be there, And
it's almost like the last surviving human beings, you're trying to save them, and they don't, and you can't reach them, and they're trying to reach you. It's a great tension that you create there.
Well, it's an interesting thing. Silence is a really, if you're flipping through the channels, if you're just flipping through and all of a sudden there's something that's completely silent, just sitting there, a face or anything, just silent. Silence is a real seduction in a way, and something that you can actually be drawn to, because we're so used to, you turn on Bloomberg TV and there's 1,500 different things trying to, keep your senses alive. That stillness and silence, I thought would be a helpful tool for us. It's also, this wasn't part of the deal. We were talking about when we started this movie, there was no pandemic. So what we were really talking about was really, if you play forward all this hatred that we've been experiencing, not just in the United States, all around the world, with Orban in Hungary and with Bolsonaro and with Duterte, and you go down the list of these guys, if you play through all of the sort of anger and pitting one against another, I said to the guys at Netflix, I said, you can play this forward 30 years. It's not inconceivable that we just off ourselves. So that was the intent. Then as we wrapped on the 15th of February, and then suddenly it was everything shut down. So everything was edited at home. You know, we weren't able to go into the editing room. But suddenly it became clear as we were doing this that this was about communication and how desperately we need to be in touch, and how we found ways like this just so that we can communicate with one another. And I'm sure you do this as well with family and friends, that, you know, I have dinners like this now, you know, just so I can, you know, Norman Lear's a dear friend of mine. He's 99 years old. He's not going to go anywhere. So we have, you know, we pour a bottle of wine and we set up the table and we have dinner, you know. And so communication became suddenly this theme, this inability to connect, became more of a driving force in the telling of the story.
Well, the movie obviously has an entirely different relevance now, as we're all stuck in our quiet homes. But you were dealing with an interesting thing that came at you, a curveball, when you found out that Felicity Jones was pregnant. And I got a big kick out of her character. She's a pregnant astronaut with a husband who obviously did something to her on the trip. So what did you do when you found out that your leading lady was pregnant?
So we were shooting, and she wasn't just pregnant like, oh, I'm pregnant. She was showing, you know, by the time she, you know, because we shot all my stuff first. So we shot from October through Christmas, my stuff. And then while we were still building the sets for the other. And so when she showed up, you could see she was pregnant. And, you know, when she first called me, I was like, fantastic. And then we all sat there for a minute, kind of quiet. And I go, what do you want to do? Because the truth of the matter is, there are any number of answers she could have given me at that point. She could have said, it's my first baby. I hate to do this, but I really want to step away. And I wouldn't have found any fault in that at all. Instead, she said, I can do everything. I can do the wire work. I've got a trainer and I've got all this stuff. And I was like, and she'd been working out some of the stuff. And we were like, look, we're not going to put a pregnant woman on wires. You know, we're not going to do that. So the first thing we tried to do was a head replacement. So we shot a few scenes where we shot it once with her. Then we brought in a body double, someone else to walk the exact same way and do all the same thing. And then we shot a blank and empty frame, and we were trying to digitally do a head replacement. First of all, it's really tedious. And second of all, it just sucks the life out of the room. And I went to bed after, I don't know, about 4 or 5 days of trying to do that. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, she's pregnant. I mean, people go on trips for 2 years. I mean, you know, actors go on sets for 4 months. They end up getting married. You know, it's highly possible that, you know, people have sex. And the idea that, you know, she's going to have, she's going to have a baby, you know, once you accept that and you stop pushing so hard against it, then it becomes a really valuable tool. You know, and my pitch to her first was, this is going to be like Fran in Frances McDormand in Argo. She, no explanation, she's pregnant. But as time went on, little Wilbur is his real name, Felicity's son's name. Wilbur became a character for us. He became something that belonged to us, the crew, the cast, all of us. It became, you know, he was the future, and so that's how we decided and designed the end of the movie to be the way it was we felt as if it actually makes it more relevant. I think, and I think it sort of, you know, it felt like it was always in there.
Well, part of what's in this movie, George, if I may be so bold, is a kind of humanity that I associate with you. It has that warmth. It has that juice, and part of it is having this pregnant astronaut, and this family that's trying, you know, and how everybody chooses to deal with the conundrum that presents itself at the end is really moving.
There was a movie. You know, when I started looking at all of these films, when I first read the script, I said to Mark, the screenwriter, and I hadn't read the book, you know, I said, so this is a modern version of On the Beach. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it is.
It is.
It's coming to terms with the inevitable, you know, and how you deal with it. Now, On the Beach ends up being much more dystopian and a lot darker at the end than our version. but that there is still that element of what you face. And it comes down, and when you watch On the Beach, the interesting thing about it was there was all of this fighting back and forth of, it's all those for the steps, the denial and the acceptance and everything. And watching that film was really helpful in understanding how we get to the place where you go, I want to see my family, even if that's not possible, even if that might mean your own death.
We're all dealing with that right now.
Well, yeah. We're dealing with it for Thanksgiving.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was a funny thing. It meant that, as big as the scale of the film was going to be, and we knew the scale was big, the stories are kind of intimate. That was the beauty of On the Beach in a way, which isn't a perfect film, but there's some good God, Fred Astaire is so good in it. But what was so interesting about a story like that is you're telling it in small pieces,
right? Personal
pieces. When I go to, when I was going to Darfur, you go to South Sudan, and there's all these horrific things. You talk about Darfur, and you'd say 300,000 people have died. It doesn't mean anything. 300,000 people just glosses over everyone's head, but you could pick one little girl and talk about her and her journey and her fight to survive. And it matters. And it teaches you so much about how, we can't really attach ourselves to big stories unless we have something personal in it. And so I thought the script had all of that in it. And, we were lucky that we got a girl who'd never acted before, who could do it all. Because she's, if you don't root,
that's a very high degree of difficulty, having a silent child.
And if you don't root for her, if you feel like she's acting or she's cheating in some way, if she's performing in some way, if you don't root for her, the movie doesn't work. And so everything, that was the hard casting. The rest of the gang, we're just people, I've worked with Kyle before and just adore him. And Demian and I have known each other since.
Well, they're both two of the most lovable actors you could find, really.
And,
Bashir
and the character,
Kyle Chandler.
In the script, those guys, the characters were really young. One of them was Russian, and they were much younger. And I thought, first of all, there's a lot more weight to it if they're older. But second of all, I said to both of them when we started, I go, I want you two to be the old Muppets in the balcony, So that's all I want from you. I want you two to be close and making fun of people. And hey, I want you guys to be the old grizzled, smart asses.
That's her fourth. I mean, she's so small. Where's it all keep coming from?
And they were so great together.
Well, there's that scene where you've got a group of astronauts outside, and I'm the jaded viewer going, one of those people isn't going to make it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Which one? And then you've got the two guys playing music and having a great time that was great. That was a great sequence that you did. Well, it's
funny. We had to pick a song, and we went through a lot of it. We tried Fly Me to the Moon. We tried all these things. And I was like, but we got to remember that and Fly Me to the Moon, a classic with Sinatra. But I think it was like $500,000 to get it or something. It was also ridiculous. It also kind of didn't work. But you needed a song that you think, 30 years from now, somebody still might be singing at a karaoke bar or whatever that would be in the future. And so, I came up with, this song, and then we had to, call the, to try to get the rights for.
The attorneys.
Yeah. Neil Diamond, and they said, We'll sell it to you, but it can in no way make fun of
the song.
Of the song or Neil in any way. Because I think,
touching me, touching you, sweet Caroline.
You have a sequence where someone doesn't do well and ends up. There's this extraordinary floating blood thing that goes on. Where the hell did that come from?
So in the screenplay and in the book, one of these characters runs out of oxygen outside, But we did that in Gravity with Sandy's character. She runs out of oxygen. And so we didn't want that to be her danger, her peril. And I was just watching all of these actual videos of astronauts in the space station, and they would take water packets and they'd splash them open and there'd be blobs of water, and then they would drink them by going like this out of the air. And I thought, well, what if she bleeds? Maddie, our effects guy, goes, that'd be interesting. The secret was that the blood had to, because I wanted it to feel like a ballet. I wanted the music to have, I wanted the music to sort of take over the sound. So I had to call up Alexander Desplat, who we haven't finished the effects yet. And I said, I want you to write a piece of music that's, a beautiful concert, a beautiful, a ballet for this blood. And he goes, you want a ballet for the blood? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, okay. And it was really funny anyway, because he's never written this much music he's never written this much of a score for a movie ever. I said, because it's silent, music is going to be telling us a lot of what's going on as well. And so he wrote such beautiful pieces. And then I went to the effects guys and I said, now it can't just be balls of blood. They have to have life to them, movement to them, and not just floating in the air. And they were like, well, how about this? And they started working on these pieces. And bit by bit, we got to the place where we thought, well, this is actually sort of something very special. And I think it works. I think it works really well now,
And you got Desplat to make it work like a ballet, right?
Listen, that guy can do anything. And it was funny because, we had this end sequence and we always had Clair de Lune playing there. And I'd sort of cut it to the song, to Clair de Lune by Debussy. And it really worked well as that piece. And now I'm going to go to another, French composer and say, now write me your version of Debussy. And he's like, hey, fuck you. And he wrote such a beautiful piece of music. And the challenge was a lot for him because, there has to be something hopeful out of that song. And it has to be simple and it has to be beautiful for that whole section at the end. And he did it. And, he's a good friend. So I'm always happy to say it, but man, what an artist he is too.
Well, sometimes the most difficult thing in the pandemic universe, and I think this must have been one of the last things you did, was the music. How did you do that? You had an orchestral score, right? You can't have 100 people in a...
It's 150 people. And they were in Abbey Road in England. And, we had there's two sound stages there. But you could only have like about 10 people at a time, obviously. And Alexander, who's in Paris, they blocked anyone coming into England. So he had to conduct over Zoom from Paris. We couldn't get in Grant and I couldn't get into England, to Abbey Road. So we're sitting in my screening room with a Zoom computer here. And on the big screen, we've got the actual movie with the score, but we're only hearing it in these different stems, so we're hearing just the horn section or just the strings or the timpani and so it's very hard to know what you have until, for days you're waiting to hear like the rest of it fill in bit by bit. There's an advantage because you've recorded in so many stems that you can mix it easier, right? You can say, okay, let's really bring down the strings here, or let's bring up the horns, or whatever it is you want to do. You can, because it's all isolated. It's as if they're all doing solos. But it's very hard to get a sense of the score. It's such a fun thing to, done 3 other scores with Alexander at Abbey Road, and to sit in that incredible space with the London Symphony Orchestra and all of this amazing thing, and have Alexander conducting and have all these 150 people playing. It's amazing, it's something that you can't get enough of. And so it was too bad and I had to do it at 4 a.m. because of the time.
Aye.
But
Well, take care, and thanks for this movie. I look forward to seeing it again.
Okay. Thanks
All
all.
right.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.